These are two facts which become very apparent to anyone who has thoroughly investigated the Epstein controversy. Firstly, without the grooming and exploitation of children aspect to the case, the majority of their other crimes would have probably gone largely unnoticed. And, secondly, all of their other crimes became inextricably linked to the grooming and sexual abuse of unsuspecting young female victims. The act of grooming a child may seem like a very specific criminal trait, but Epstein and Maxwell also applied their grooming skills to adults, specifically people in power who had a weakness for forbidden fruit. Epstein and Maxwell were compulsive in their exploitative behavior towards children, but they were also willing to exploit any human regardless of age to meet their operational goals. Whilst exploiting naive adults is something most people in society can suffer and tolerate to a large extent, the exploitation of children is an unforgivable act, which has made the Epstein case so well renowned. In examining the criminal behavior of Epstein and Maxwell, it's clear that they were guilty of abusing vulnerable girls, but depending on how the individual victims reacted to that abuse, they enacted different strategies to best utilize that person further. They were experts in normalizing completely outrageous behavior, and their deviant advances on their young victims and their target's initial response didn't seem to deter them from squeezing the most potential out of each of their quarry. To understand this seemingly sadistic bent which Maxwell and Epstein showed towards their young victims, and how they could groom so many young girls to a point where those victims had become veritable sex slaves, one must first understand the category of sexual offender which fits the criminal profiles of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. In basic criminal profiling terms, Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein fit comfortably in the category of sadistic preferential child molesters. This simply means that as pedophiles, they have a sexual preference for children above adults, and that the relationship they form with their victims is based on sadistic control, coercion, and is essentially just a way to exert power over another human who is more vulnerable or naive due to their age and/or experience. Sadistic preferential pedophiles are the most dangerous category of pedophile, and are also the rarest. One of the ways in which sadistic preferential pedophiles differ to most other pedophiles is that they are likely to engage in a longer and more complex grooming process. Epstein and Maxwell's grooming operation began properly in the 1990s, and the majority of organizational aspects of these criminal activities were headed by Maxwell herself. Most criminal pedophile behavior experienced within society is committed not by preferential pedophiles like Epstein and Maxwell, but instead acts by criminals who are most often better categorized as situational pedophiles. Situational pedophiles will normally maintain typical sexual relationships with other adults, but situational pressure in their life will see them offend, often by downloading pedophile imagery and movies and storing them in a disorganized fashion. Preferential pedophiles are much more aware of the social taboo surrounding their actions and are more likely to be extremely organized, hiding their actions whenever possible. Epstein and Maxwell, although themselves probably best classified as sadistic preferential pedophiles, understood the sexual dynamics and the wild proclivities of their targets for influence and compromise operations. These marks were often a mix of wealthy people who were all situated in pressure cooker-like big business environments or affiliated to very stressful major political institutions or roles. Epstein and Maxwell used all of their skills and abilities to compromise these targets, so they could later be manipulated into taking actions which were normally perceived as against the target's